World wars fought over water, skies that glow endless with pollution, cities buried under 5 trillion tons of garbage every single day. This is the plot to a dystopian Hollywood blockbuster. This could be the future if Earth's population hits 1 trillion. Should you be worried? And more importantly, when could this happen? What would life look like in such an overcrowded world? Find out on today's episode of The Infographic Show, The World If There Were 1 Trillion People. The current world population is just over 8 billion people. According to the United Nations, that number will reach around 8.6 billion by 2030 and could swell to 10 billion by 2100. These figures are based on the latest data and trends, but as we know, life is full of surprises, like a global pandemic that's killed over 7 million people across the globe. When the population hits the 1 trillion mark, vital resources will be dangerously scarce, and that includes water. On average, men need about 15.5 cups of water per day, while women require 11.5. Doing the math for 1 trillion people, that is an astronomical 845 billion gallons of water needed every day. Earth holds approximately 7.6 quadrillion gallons of fresh water, yet only 1.4% is accessible. That gives us roughly 140 trillion gallons of fresh water. It would take just 176 days, less than half a year, for 1 trillion humans to completely drain Earth's fresh water supply. So water is literally a life and death resource that will need to be secured by the governments of each country to ensure their populations can survive. This means that future wars may not be because of ideological or political differences, but because of water. This also means populations will likely shift to where water is accessible. With 1 trillion people, the population won't be evenly spread across the globe. Many regions simply won't have enough water to support life. Instead, megacities will form around large sources of fresh water or massive desalination facilities. There simply wouldn't be enough water to meet the needs of 1 trillion people, both for drinking and for watering crops. Conflict over water resources would be inevitable. Growing enough food for 1 trillion people wouldn't be as much of a problem. Technologies like hydroponics, vertical farming, and genetic modification would likely ensure that everyone has enough to eat. The real challenge lies in securing enough water and energy to sustain these future farms. While food production may not be the limiting factor, humanity's ability to acquire and recycle fresh water most certainly will be. To sustain a population of 1 trillion people, humanity would need an enormous amount of energy. This would require a shift in how we harness power. If we continue to generate energy the way we do today, the planet's fossil fuel reserves would be depleted within just a few years. Oil, natural gas, and coal take millions of years to form, and there is no way to replenish them quickly enough to meet the demands of 1 trillion humans. But that doesn't just end with fossil fuels. Entire forests will be decimated for their natural resources, and landscapes could be obliterated for their minerals. Fossil fuel depletion, deforestation, and mineral resource extraction paints a bleak future for humanity. It's hard to pinpoint exactly how much carbon dioxide would be released if all fossil fuel deposits were burned for energy, but estimates suggest it could be between almost 2,700 and 5,300 gigatons of CO2. The average global temperatures could soar by 17 degrees Fahrenheit. In the polar regions, the increase could be as much as a staggering 68 degrees Fahrenheit. This rise would melt vast ice sheets, triggering a catastrophic sea level rise. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, if all glaciers melted due to human-induced climate change, sea levels could increase by as much as 230 feet. This would be enough to flood every coastal city on the planet. So a future where 1 trillion people live on planet Earth would require a shift in the way humans acquire and harness energy. Deserts would need to be converted into solar farms. Coastal regions would have wind turbines covering an area the size of a small country. Regions with active geothermal activity would become vital for harnessing Earth's internal heat to generate electricity. But without a major shift toward alternative energy, the future could be dark, both literally and metaphorically. With mass resource extraction comes another drastic consequence for a world with 1 trillion people. While housing that many people sounds overwhelming, humans don't actually need vast amounts of land to live. Take New York City. There's around 8.1 million people packed into just 300 square miles. That's 27,000 people per square mile. So even with 1 trillion people, it doesn't necessarily mean humans will need to cover the entire planet with buildings and roads. While the population could be contained within high-density pockets around the globe, this would be highly unlikely. This means entire ecosystems and its species would be wiped from the face of the Earth. Anywhere a megacity is built, the natural landscape will be reshaped beyond recognition. Even the most densely packed cities will experience urban sprawl, with their borders stretching far beyond their urban center. This leads to what's known as the heat island effect, where concrete, asphalt, and other man-made materials absorb and radiate heat from the sun. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, daytime temperatures in urban areas could be 1 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than in surrounding regions. At night, the difference could be 2 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. These temperature differences will only worsen as cities grow larger and global temperatures continue to climb due to increasing greenhouse gas emissions. And it seems like our reliance on fossil fuels won't be phased out anytime soon. With 1 trillion people on the planet, pollution, mass building projects, and habitat destruction will increase at an exponential rate. The environment on our planet will change drastically, and it could lead to a 6th mass extinction, one that humanity may not be able to recover from. We would be firmly in what scientists call the Anthropocene, an epoch dominated by humans and our modification of the planet. According to the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, every day up to 150 species are lost. This current extinction rate is astonishing and terrifying, as it's happening with just 8 billion people on the planet. What would the extinction rate look like with 1 trillion people on Earth? Some scientists estimate we're losing closer to 24 species per day. Either way, with 1 trillion people on the planet, species loss will skyrocket unless we make a conscious effort to integrate conservation into our future plans. Later in this video, we'll dissect exactly how much space we would need if the world lived and consumed like the United States and other countries. But first, we'll look at the biggest little threat that a population of 1 trillion people faces. With such a large number of people crammed into cities or within specific regions, diseases will run rampant. Viruses and bacteria thrive in densely populated areas where rapid transmission is inevitable. Stopping the spread of infectious diseases in a world of 1 trillion will be a monumental challenge, especially since globalization will reach new heights with future technology. The biggest threat to humanity in the future may not be war or resource depletion, but a microbe that hijacks the human body for its own survival. There is one other impact that such a large population would have. The average American generates about 5 pounds of solid waste every day. If the global average waste generation is even half that of Americans, a population of 1 trillion would produce a staggering 2.5 trillion pounds of waste per day. That's around 912 trillion pounds of garbage every year, requiring disposal or recycling. Landfills would grow into mountains, oceans would become home to floating islands of trash, and incinerators would be pushed to their limits just to manage the daily output. But what about poop? The average bowel movement weighs between 1/4 pound and 1 pound. Let's say each person produces half a pound of poop daily. So every day, 1 trillion people would create 500 billion pounds of poop. For health reasons, we can't just let that much waste sit around. So what could we do with it? Perhaps in the future, human waste could be used as fertilizer. Or we could take a page from False Creek, a neighborhood in Vancouver, where they're using sewage as a heat source during colder months. Since human waste leaves the body at approximately 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, it could be a cheap and plentiful source of heat in the future. Let's now get into some of the data. In a world of 1 trillion humans, how much space is actually needed? Can our planet even support such a large population indefinitely? It all depends on consumption. Realistically, it's unlikely humans will ever overpopulate the planet. Yes, there is a carrying capacity to our world, but it's doubtful humanity would ever reach that point. But this doesn't mean a large human population can't lead to the collapse of the global ecosystem. The problem with humans isn't so much the number of individuals as how much each person consumes. According to the Global Footprint Network, if 7 billion people lived like the average person in India, an area the size of Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia would be needed to support the population. This land area would include housing, farms for food, and facilities for energy production. However, if 7 billion people lived like the average Chinese person, we would not have enough land to support everyone on the planet. In fact, we would need about 10% more land than we already have. As we head west, things get scarier. If 7 billion people lived like the average person in France, we wouldn't need just a slightly bigger planet, we'd need 1.5 Earths to sustain that lifestyle. which is a problem. There's only one habitable planet that we know of, Earth. Since we can't make Earth any bigger, this way of life is clearly unsustainable. But it gets worse. If 7 billion people lived like the average American, we wouldn't just need one extra planet, we'd need 3. This is because Americans are some of the top consumers in the world. One of the biggest contributors to America's large ecological footprint is its high consumption of meat. Think fast food burgers and medium-rare steaks. Delicious but devastating for the environment. But this is a problem that can be fixed. If Americans switched to a vegetarian diet and repurposed the land used for livestock feed, the U.S. could produce enough food to feed an additional 350 million people. That means the only realistic way to feed 1 trillion people on Earth would be for the majority to adopt a plant-based diet. We would be remiss if we didn't point out that the data we just presented was for a population of 7 billion. So if nothing changes and a future population of 1 trillion lives like Americans do today, we'll need 142.86 Earth-sized planets to sustain them. Overall, a future with 1 trillion people on Earth seems like a nightmare. Huge amounts of waste, regions stripped of resources, and the possibility of wars over water and food. The question is, when will this apocalyptic future begin? When will humans reach 1 trillion? Medicine is making huge strides toward prolonging human life. There have already been experiments that have demonstrated the power of genetic modification using biotech like CRISPR. Although sanctioned, these tests have shown that human genes can be swapped out and altered at the DNA level. It's only a matter of time before cancer, Alzheimer's, and other degenerative diseases are cured. Some scientists have even hypothesized that the very process of aging can not only be stopped but reversed by modifying certain genes. Advances in science, technology, and energy production could lead to humans living longer, healthier lives. Fewer people would die from the diseases and degeneration that comes with old age. If this happens, the human population could surpass current projections. But when would we hit 1 trillion? Well, over the last 10 years, the average global population has grown by about 1% annually. The rule of 70 calculates doubling time by dividing 70 by the growth rate. So, with a 1% growth rate, the population will double around every 68 years. This means that in 476 years, there would be 1 trillion humans on the planet. That's not so far away. Before that happens, humanity needs a plan. If we continue business as usual, the planet won't be able to sustain us. However, current data shows global population growth is slowing, and it's expected to stall and decrease long before we ever reach 1 trillion. So it doesn't seem like a world of 1 trillion humans is in the cards. However, crazier things have happened, and if we're not careful, the current world population is enough to change our planet so drastically that humanity won't even reach 10 billion. What problems do you think humanity will face in the future? Is a population of 1 trillion likely? Let us know in the comments. Now watch What If the Earth Stopped Spinning Minute by Minute, or check out What If You Were the Last Person on Earth.